Today it is my real pleasure to speak with Daphne Michaels. Daphne, you are a human potential expert, best-selling author, and a guide in the realm of ultra-conscious living. You have decades of experience as a licensed psychotherapist and a deep background in behavioral science and energetic healing. You are passionate about guiding people to elevate their consciousness, awaken their energetic potential, and live with alignment, clarity, and purpose. Daphne, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I am pronouncing your name in probably a way that you're not much used to it, but as I told you, because it is a Greek name, and I would call it Daphne if it was Greek. So I'm kind of in between pronunciations when
I
I
like
say
different pronunciations. It's perfect.
That's great. Daphne, I will start straight away with something that intrigues me even by that short introduction of you that I gave. You speak about ultra-conscious living. Tell us, what does that look like in the context of the busy modern life that many of us, or certainly the people listening, are living?
Thank you for asking that question. I think this is a key question that each one of us should be looking at in terms of how we are living our lives. In ordinary reality, we are boxed into a very small framework, and it's generally through the lens of our ego. And I know that's a big concept, and we can talk about that. But generally speaking, what that means is that we're living in boxes that are too small for us. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for real heartfelt connection to ourselves and one another. So ultra consciousness is an interesting term because it was invented in the early 1900s. And this term was invented by Henry LaFontaine, who was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and Paul Otlet, who was the head of information science. He was the father of information science. He invented the Dewey Decimal System. In the early 1900s, they said, we want to catalog all human experience. And they came up with the term ultra consciousness to describe a type of experience when people have an elevated, cosmic, instantaneous cosmic connection. And they said this surpasses mere self-awareness, and it takes us to a connection with the cosmos, with the universe. I think that is fascinating that they said that in the early 1900s. And what they said was that this was very rare. 100 years later, it's not rare anymore. Many, many of us are expanding our consciousness to become more of who we're meant to be. So what it means is relearning how to be who we really are in an expanded state of consciousness, connected to the cosmos, connected to the creativity of life, and living this out in our daily lives.
Thank you. You said instantaneous cosmic connection. I think that was the phrase that you used. And also expanding our consciousness. My question is I understand the description. I mean, I get it, especially when you said the term instantaneous cosmic connection. In my mind, the phrase spiritual awakening or some kind of, evolution of the spiritual path came to my mind. My question is, how does one, let's say, walk that path if they are not there? How can one start directing to that expansion of the consciousness, as you said?
So I think that's a really good point. in the early 1900s, when the term first came about, they talked about an instantaneous connection.
Okay.
However, nobody can hold on to that state of consciousness 24/7.
Okay.
Even people who have that consciousness and actually have what's called a spiritual awakening or a conversion experience,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be able to hold on to it, because at the moment they walk into their everyday world, their defense structure is going to reactivate. And so they're going to be right back into the consciousness of that small box. So it's not a matter of attaining a state of consciousness that we get to enjoy 24/7. It's a matter of recognizing that consciousness and beginning to develop pathways that allow us in our own being to live more and more connected in this way. And I can give you an example. I
Please do.
think everybody has had an experience of connection. Maybe it was connection to a loved one. Maybe it was a time in nature. Maybe this beautiful sacred connection came in a dream. But the experience in our body, the actual experience, it shifts our vibration. And through this shift of our vibration, we enter an elevated consciousness. So when you have those moments, those are moments not to ignore. Those are moments to cultivate.
Thank you. I took note, and I think it's important, and I will repeat it. It's but that it's not about attaining a certain state of consciousness. I think that is, I don't know, probably a misunderstanding. Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
the way that I asked it means that others might have the same exact
Mm-hmm.
misconception, perhaps. So let's talk more about cultivating, as you said, these moments. How does one recognize them, and how perhaps I would ask you to tell us something in a practical sense to cultivate them, because I get it and it does make sense. You know very well that for many people the missing link in doing these things or elevating or is
Mm-hmm.
taking some kind of action. So they just
Yes.
accumulate knowledge doing nothing with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear more about the cultivation
Mm-hmm.
then.
Yeah. So, first of all, I agree with you that if it's not practical, it's not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And so my work has always been about taking people to an expanded state of consciousness, which is natural to our being, and then looking at how we can practically bring it into our life. And so let me say this, though, because there is a framework to it that becomes important in this
Yeah.
way. And so quantum mechanics, that may be a word that people are hearing more and more about when it comes to personal development. But basically, there is now a complete thought around how spirituality and science are coming together. And so there are many people on a spiritual path who embrace the idea that what quantum physicists are talking about in terms of energy, in terms of living with a state of vibration, is actually a spiritual path, that they're one and the same. And so when you look at that, we understand that in quantum theory, there are actually different dimensions to experience. There's 11 dimensions in their theory. So what I've done is I've tried to figure out, okay, from a human perspective, what are those dimensions? Because that's the answer to helping us understand how to walk a higher consciousness path. And so the first dimension, or what I call the first field, is that ordinary reality that's filled with trauma and drama, and it's scary. It's a scary place to live, but people live there most of the time. But a higher dimension is when we are in a protected environment. So that may be with friends or loved ones, or in our own homes, or in nature, or a sanctuary. Our ego literally relaxes so that we can remember more of these higher states of consciousness. So those are just two fields out of a big model that make a tremendous difference when people are trying to walk this path. So when it comes to calibrating, the calibration happens in the second field. It doesn't happen in the first field. So the first field is going to challenge us to live in a fragmented way. We're going to be fragmented because that's what the first field does. It makes us a little crazy, and it does not bring out the best in us. But when we're around loved ones and we're around friends, we relax and it starts to bring out the best in us. From those moments, that's a calibration. We're recalibrating. So we take those organic experiences, and if we begin to develop them, we realize that those are states of consciousness that really support us. What else brings this out? Standing under starlight brings this out in so many people. Watching the sun come up in the morning brings this out in so many people. Connecting with nature brings this out. So we begin to learn how to balance the first field, which we have to be in so much of the time, with this second field of healing, restoration, and recalibration to our true essence. And as we do this, we begin to develop the actual energy field, the actual electromagnetic energy field that allows us to go back into the world, but not in the first field, in what I call the third field, which is flow. And people are talking about flow these days. And that's when magical things happen. We attract what we need. It's the law of attraction. It's fun. It's fulfilling. We're back in the world, but we're in the world on a higher bandwidth. And this is something we can literally develop by becoming more connected to ourselves and more connected to the universe.
This is wonderful, and I had a question when you were saying about the first dimension and the trauma. Is it, of course, I get that, and the second one, which is, as you said, being in a protective environment that will relax your ego, as you said, and allow that calibration to happen. Apart from being in a protective environment, is there anything else we need to do about that first dimension, or just focus on being in a second dimension so that we can move on?
So in the first dimension, we need to survive.
Obviously. Sure.
and kind of, be in it, but not of it, in a way.
Do we need to solve anything unresolved in that dimension? Probably that's more accurately the question I wanted to ask.
So do you mean trying to change the dynamics of the first dimension, or change ourself in it?
Change ourselves in it. And,
Absolutely. That's a great question. I love that question. We have to become smarter than the first field. And the thing is that the first field is literally 7-year-olds trying to coexist, right? Because it is the ego, right? Everybody in the first field is operating from a very young programming. And so it is a lot of 7-year-olds trying to coexist. And it's really easy to go down the rabbit hole of being angry and being upset and being, traumatized and all of these things. When we bring more awareness to ourselves, watching ourselves in the first field, we say, don't do that. Don't say that. Don't send that. Don't step into it. We live with greater awareness of how to not get caught up in the first field. Because once we get caught up in the first field, our own energy is again fragmented and we can't shift to the second field. Right? I mean, so many people go home and collapse at night. They're not enjoying their evenings, right? They're just getting to the door, and then they're oftentimes processing the day with their partner, and everybody's feeling terrible about it, and nobody can get to the second field. So when we live in the first field lightly, and we try to navigate it and not get caught up in it and use our higher coping skills to manage it, then we step into the door of our own time. And it's just a very small shift to move into this higher dimension. So we don't want to get too deep. We want to keep on the edge of the first field as much as possible.
That's great, thank you. And what would you say then to someone who has experienced what you described as the third field? You've said flow, and I think most people can connect with that. Or I don't think you used the word synchronicities, but also that word came to my mind when you were describing. So let's say someone listening has experienced that dimension on and off at times, stepping back again to the lower, if I can use that phrase, the lower dimensions. What would you say to him or her in order to, let's say, maintain more presence in that flow situation?
The thing with flow is that it is literally waves of potential that we're riding. And once again, science and spirituality come together here and tell us that we live in a universe of potential. And when we're on that wave of flow, we have potential in our hands. And a lot of people don't use it. A lot of people just say, oh, that was a really great day, but they don't lean into it and begin to unfold it. So the way to stay in flow is to become an active participant in shaping our lives, which means leaning in. It means following up on those connections. It means dreaming. It means believing and following it.
Thank you. The phrase you used, leaning into the potential, I think that describes it perfectly. Even, when I imagine someone leaning into, it means there is a movement towards that direction.
Yes, it is not passive. It's co-creative.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about a surfer on the water, and if they're not navigating the surf, they're going to fall off the board. The surf isn't just carrying them. It's not a passive ride. Mm-hmm. And so that's the same with flow. It's not a passive ride. Mm-hmm. So when we learn to surf those waves and lean into the portals that open for us, mm-hmm. then we're creating a magical life.
I like very much the analogy when we talk about flow and then surfing, because the water can be very rough. Some people think flow is something very smooth and easy, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Daphne, I'm curious, even though it's probably beyond the scope of this conversation, at least how it's been so far, but I would still like to hear a bit more about the following dimension after, living in this flow or having developed the energy field to a certain extent. What is next?
Okay, yes. So I mostly have developed the first 5 fields, and that's what I teach. And there
Okay.
are fields beyond that that I have a pretty good idea about what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But the first 5 I've actually developed quite a lot.
Right.
So beyond the third field, beyond flow, is spacelessness. And so basically, as our vibration gets higher and we're tapping into higher levels of ultra consciousness, we actually begin to connect beyond our physical environment. We begin to experience how we can experience people, like for instance, loved ones who are in a different location. But we're still connected, or we're able to send energy or prayers or whatever through these fields of energy, and they actually land for people. So one of the reasons that this is so awesome is because it helps develop intimacy. So let's take a couple, for example. And let's say they have this really great connection, and then they say goodbye for the day, and then they don't feel connected during the day. It's a complete disconnect. And so they're not really sure what the other person is feeling or how their day's going or anything like that. And then they come back together and they're not in sync, right? Because they had really separate days. When we're in the fourth field, we're in sync, whether we're with the person or not. If we care about people, we're in sync with them, whether we're there. And so this opens up this whole way of understanding that consciousness work is leading us toward unity consciousness. We're not separated, we're connected.
Thank you. How important it is, well, I suppose I'm trying to think the best way to phrase this question. You know, there is in matters like this, when one speaks of abstract concepts like some of the ones that we have been describing, there is a distinct difference between being able to comprehend or even believe in intellectually in these concepts and agreeing with them on a belief level, and there is a completely different matter when you have experiential knowledge of, you said earlier, you know, the, what was it, the cosmic connection or something like this, which I suppose it's another thing to talk about it or believe that yes, of course we are all connected, and another thing to actually live it and experience it. So how important is that, and is it something for one to aim for in order, you know, to advance the spiritual journey?
Yes, it's important to aim for the experience. And I have worked with people who really didn't think any of this existed. They thought that people that were talking about it were lying for some reason. For some reason, maybe they thought it made them feel better to lie about it or something. However, I have watched people go from non-belief to belief, because once we learn the concepts and once we accept the mystery, once we step into the mystery, our human consciousness takes us to the experience. I had somebody in one of my groups, and it was before lunch, and we were all talking about the connection to nature. And they told me later that they didn't get it. To them, nature was just something that was out there. But they went home for lunch and they were eating lunch, and they said, all of a sudden, this little bird showed up at the window. And the little bird was so cute, and they were transfixed by this bird. And then all of a sudden, their heart opened. They felt the connection, and they got it for the first time. So once we say to ourselves, I want to experience it, I honestly want to open my heart and my mind to the possibility, our human consciousness will take us to the experience. And then we have to be brave, because for a lot of people it scares them.
Of course. Oh, that's a huge topic on its own. I think
Yeah.
we could have an entire conversation about
Yeah.
letting go and surrender and all these things.
Yes,
Of
that's
course.
it.
This is wonderful. Daphne, thank you very much. As I will start wrapping things up, the thing I wanted to ask you is, where do you want to direct the listener of this conversation that wants to?
My website, DaphneMichaels.com. There's a free event that I offer, which is super fun. It's called the SHIB Experience, where I work with your energy blocks. And, it's a good time as a small group. So that would be a great place to start.
Thank you. That's great. And I also have, Daphne, two final quick questions that I always ask. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development is about taking full responsibility for the actualization of our potential.
Very nicely put. Thank you. That's great and very succinct and very whole comes to mind, very inclusive of many concepts. Thank you. And a hypothetical question: if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give her?
I would say, just keep going. Your time will come. Because I've been on this path since I was 19. And for a long time, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. But now everybody is getting it, it seems, and I could not be happier.
Thank you. Daphne, I want to thank you very much for this conversation. I enjoyed it very much, and I think there have been many, how can I put it, perhaps practical elements that have come out of this conversation. So I appreciate very much. I want to wish you all the very best with everything that you do and to carry on doing.
Thank you so much.
I will leave it to you for your parting words and anything else you want to tell the listener.
Well, I can tell you that this has been a wonderful conversation. Even though you're in a different part of the world, and of course we're here, through technology, but I can still feel the energy and the like-minded vision. So I really appreciate that. And I don't think there's anything better than coming together with people on this path. So thank you so much.